White Sox fans, let me talk to you. NWI Steve coming here live tonight, running solo for the first time here for the Sox on Tap Sunday Funday show. We're going to take a look back at the last week here of White Sox baseball that included three separate opponents coming live to the corner of 35th and Shields. But first, before we dive into all of that action here, remember, as always, folks, you want to be going to ontapsportsnet.com for all your Chicago sports literature and podcasting needs. That's where you can get our guy, Sox Insane, and his daily White Sox recap articles, taking a look at what took place in the previous night's action at the corner of 35th and Shields. You can get all kinds of opinionated content from, well, guys like me, and Besnick will throw some good stuff in there recently. He's had a lot of opinions on Andrew Vaughn of late. Our buddy Anthony and Jonathan, who are on sabbatical here this afternoon and this weekend here, throwing some good content in there as always. But like I said, you can always count on hard-hitting White Sox content from this crew here at Sox on Tap. So let's dig right into it here. Like I said, a big 7-game homestand at the corner of 35th and Shields this week. 3 different opponents coming in. First and foremost, the Los Angeles Dodgers making their biannual trip to the corner of 35th and Shields, and the Shohei Ohtani experience coming live here on the south side. And it did not disappoint, as Ohtani, arguably the best baseball player on the planet, did put on quite a show for all the fans that were in attendance over the course of the 3-game series here. Series went kind of as expected, I would say. Sox getting swept in all 3 games over the course of this series. They were mildly competitive games, didn't really have any significant blowouts there, but the Sox offensively here kind of showed you some of the struggles that we have seen from them throughout the entirety of this season here, struggling to put together offensive efforts on a consistent basis and ultimately leading to 3 losses. First, Monday, Garrett Crochet took the mound for the White Sox and went out there and did not disappoint, as has been the norm here throughout the course of the season. Crochet went out there through 5 2/3 innings of scoreless ball, striking out 6, leaving the White Sox in a position in a 0-0 tie to potentially win a baseball game. However, the bullpen would falter following Crochet's departure, and the Sox offense was not able to muster anything against the Dodgers pitching staff that evening. Sox lost the game 3-0 to, well, hashtag set the tone in a very unceremonious fashion for the series right there. Next on Tuesday, the true Southside ethnic holiday, Polish Heritage Night at the corner of 35th and Shields. I was in attendance, as you might expect. Sox fell in this game 4-3. Team actually went out there and scored 3 runs within their first 4 hitters against Bobby Miller on Tuesday. And the offense went completely cold after that, not scoring a run for the rest of the series there. Went 54 consecutive outs without touching home plate. Very White Sox, if I have to say so myself, not really putting together many compelling or challenging plate appearances against the Dodgers pitching staff that we would see over the course of the next 2 games once Bobby Miller was taken out of the ball game on Tuesday. Really very frustrating to see over those next 2 days. Team not being able to muster any kind of offensive effort against a Dodgers team that is a little bit bitten by the injury bug here at the moment. No Mookie Betts, no Maximum Muncy out there, but the Dodgers were able to do just enough and are able to excel in their pitching and run prevention departments there to take 3 games from the lowly Chicago White Sox over the first 3 days of this week here. So homestand got off to a very rough start. Shohei Ohtani, like I said, did kind of steal the show in his annual trip to the South Side here, actually becoming the first Dodgers player to hit leadoff home runs in consecutive games. So Dodgers are a very storied franchise that has been around since the late 19th century here to be the first guy to ever do that. And then he also was a guy that set a Dodgers franchise record, having an RBI in 10 consecutive games. So that just goes to show you why Shohei Ohtani is, like I said, widely revered as the best baseball player on the planet. And he continues to show you and continues to do amazing things on an almost nightly basis. So it was certainly cool to be able to go see him up close in person 2 nights earlier this week. I wish the outcomes would have been a little bit different, but anytime you have a chance to see someone of Shohei Ohtani's star power and his caliber and skill, it's obviously an opportunity that you have to take. Following the conclusion of that 3-game set, the Atlanta Barbs came in for a makeup game from the rainout, the first homestand of the season. White Sox were actually going to go and have a bullpen game for this one here against the Braves, coming in for this short 1-game makeup set. And Chad Kuhl got the start for the Sox and actually went out there and threw the ball very well. 5 White Sox pitchers were actually able to combine to shut out the Braves offense. The only offense and the only run scored the entire day was a solo home run off the bat of Luis Robert Jr. to give the White Sox a 1-0 victory and take 2 out of 3 games from the Atlanta Braves this year. This is the second consecutive season that our White Sox have been able to win a series against the Atlanta Braves. So I think it is hashtag confirmed at this point. The Sox own the Barbs. I mean, it's just science at this point here, folks. I mean, 2 years in a row, taking 2 out of 3 from this Barbs team. I think by the transitive property here, the White Sox are better than the Barbs. I'm reaching out for confirmation on that here, and I'll get back to you shortly as I have more information available. Following that victory on Thursday, the Colorado Rockies came in for a 3-game weekend set in what is undoubtedly the biggest series of the year. And Sox on Tap contributor Besnick, Sox Insane, has chronicled on numerous occasions the heated rivalry that has taken place between the White Sox and the Rockies. And I call this the battle for Juan Uribe here. The Rockies believe that they are a team that can go out there and try to claim Juan Uribe as one of theirs. Not going to allow that. Juan Uribe has a statue right outside gate 4 there at the corner of 35th and Shields. Made arguably the greatest World Series catch to preserve the second out in the bottom of the 9th inning in Game 4 at Houston on October 26th of 2005. And they think that they can claim Juan Uribe. I'm not going to allow that. So, big series for the Sox here coming in here against their heated rivals. These two teams have split 22 games over the course of interleague play since that was instituted in 1997. Sox took the opener on Friday by a score of 5-3. Drew Thorpe took the mound for the Sox, making his first home start since being called up with the squad here. Thorpe threw the ball very well. 6 innings of 2-run ball, 4 strikeouts, 1 walk. Saw significant flashes of the changeup being on display there, really tantalizing Rockies hitters, inducing a lot of soft contact, getting swings and misses with it here. Again, seeing the fastball playing in about the 91 to 92 mile an hour range, but then using the changeup to really kind of put guys away and, again, induce that soft contact here. One thing I'm going to be continuing to watch with Drew Thorpe over time here as he continues to get more experience since the call-up is the integration of a third pitch here. We're seeing him try to utilize the slider a little bit more frequently here. Some of the data over his first couple of starts is indicating that we're starting to see a sweeper starting to make its way into his arsenal here a little bit. That could be a Bannister project. So everybody knows I am the Bannister Bach. In Bannister, we trust. Don't forget it, folks. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Drew Thorpe continues to evolve here as he gets more experience at the major league level. The only blemish on Drew Thorpe's line on Friday night was a 2-run homer that he did surrender in the bottom of the 6th inning to Tim Doyle right there. But the Sox were able to bounce back off of that with a big 4-run 6th inning there. Paul DeYoung, nice RBI single in there, and Tommy Pham, a 2-run RBI single to put the Sox ahead. They would not relinquish the lead in this one. Saturday, it was a scorcher at the ballpark. Took the game in, and I was fortunate enough to be able to watch my guy, Jonathan Cannon, up close and personal for the first time with this one. And Cannon stuff, was giving up some hard contact here a little bit. Second start in a row. So going to have to kind of go back to the drawing board here. We saw this after a couple of outings early on during the month of April. Go back, take a look and see what adjustments and what tweaks need to be made. But again, I continue to be impressed with Jonathan Cannon's ability to just maintain poise when he's out there on the mound, go right after hitters, and pitch aggressively in the strike zone and throw everything he has with intent. That's one of the things that I always like to look at when it comes to a starting pitcher here. So Jonathan Cannon did not disappoint with that. So the Sox were down in this game 3-0. And in the bottom of the 5th here, things really started to take a turn because the White Sox decided to deploy the multi-home run strategy. Everybody knows I love that multi-home run strategy. Sox would hit 4 homers over the course of the next 5 innings there. Another one coming off the bat of Luis Robert Jr., Lenyn Sosa getting things started off, Paul DeYoung launching another one, and my guy, Corey Lee, who really had a very tough month of June at the plate here. Really saw a lot of his offensive numbers take a significant dip during the month, but he was able to put a charge into a nice 3-run homer there in the 8th inning to really cap things off. Sox won the game 11-3 for their second consecutive comeback victory over the course of the series. Team was going for the sweep here earlier this afternoon with the ace Garrett Crochet on the mound. Sox would fall behind early in this game, 2-0 in the second inning. After a couple of seeing eye singles and duck snorts, Garrett Crochet would throw a balk in there. So the Sox were down 2-0. They would actually scratch and claw their way back into this game, tie it up at 2. This thing would go extra innings, would go 14 innings here. The Sox would ultimately lose 5-4 in this one. I can't be overly upset about this performance here today. Yes, the Sox did have a number of opportunities to try to put this game away and try to tack on additional offense, but in a lot of ways, you have to kind of tip your cap to the Colorado Rockies. They made 4 or 5 just outstanding defensive plays in the course of this game here that prevented runs from getting across the board here for the Sox and trying to tack on additional runs. Some very questionable tactical decisions from Mr. Clean. Nothing new on that front here in the later innings with sacrifice bunting with guys like Andrew Benintendi, Nicky Lopez throwing one in there. And also want to just give a little quick shout out here to Mike Soroka, who went out there, had 4 innings of relief today, really showcasing that slider and putting this team in a position to try to win a game here in the later innings. Obviously, with the Mickey Mouse ghost runner rule coming into place, Soroka was able to put this team in a position there with several of those relief innings here, preventing runs from coming across the plate. Ultimately, didn't happen here for the Sox. They would fall 5-4 today, but they would take the series 2-1. So again, our White Sox can rightfully lay claim to Juan Uribe as our guy. He is ours, Rockies. You are not getting him, so forget it. Don't even think about it. So I want to turn this into a little bit of a more interactive show here today before we kind of get into some other news and notes from the course of this week here. A lot of speculation going on about the trade front here. Boob Nightingale published his weekly column for USA Today and talked about the fact that, according to team executives, Garrett Crochet is expected to be moved in the next month here before the July 30th trade deadline. He also mentions in his column that the Sox did make an attempt to extend Garrett Crochet, but they were summarily rejected in their offer here. So little fascinating tidbit coming from Bob. He also then kind of goes on to say that any trade speculation for Luis Robert probably isn't going to come to fruition here this year, given his inconsistent performance and injuries that he has sustained throughout the course of the season here. What is also fascinating, however, about the speculation that seems to be really swirling around Garrett Crochet more so than any other player on the White Sox roster right now is during the broadcast here today, Steve Stone, who is someone who is very tapped in and very close with Jerry Reinsdorf himself, said that he does not anticipate Garrett Crochet being moved before the July 30th trade deadline. So you have really 2 opposing opinions and 2 people that are really very close and have direct conduit to Jerry Reinsdorf here, saying contrasting opinions on the status of Garrett Crochet here. So this is something that over the course of the next 30 days is really going to be an almost daily topic. Crochet was questioned about it after the game, stated that he would absolutely love to stay here with the White Sox long term. I've made my position known on this, that if the pitching hierarchy within this team believes that he can start long term here, that this is a guy that you hold on to and you try to build around here. If you have concerns about the durability aspect and his ability to stay in the starting rotation from a long-term perspective here, then you make that consideration. Obviously, the talks about a contract extension being rejected by Crochet and his representation kind of throws a little bit of a wrench into things here, given the Sox history of trying to offer quote-unquote team-friendly extensions to players during the course of their arbitration-eligible years. It's not surprising to see that this team would try to extend Garrett Crochet, and I think in a lot of ways that's an indicator that they believe that he is going to be able to handle a starting role well into the future here. So Hopefully, maybe that's just an initial discussion here, or maybe Garrett Crochet is just a player that believes in himself and wants to ultimately get to free agency, test the market, because he believes that he has turned the corner and is going to position himself as one of the best starting pitchers in the game here, as he has been through the first half of this 2024 season, and ultimately wants to bet on himself and go into the open market and try to get as much for his services as he can. And listen, as someone who is very pro-capitalist and someone that is a big proponent of individuals knowing their worth and going and getting every dollar they can, I respect that. But at the same time, I would love to see this team go out there, make a play on Garrett Crochet to keep him in the fold long term here. So going to get to a couple of comments here in the section. Our guy SPF giving me some props here for the hat game today. Listen, I like to mix it up. I've got a lot of the old school hats that this team has worn throughout the course of the history here today. So going with the old school 1987 to 1990 look. I got the t-shirt to accompany it. So it's one of my favorites here. This is the hat that, when I really started to become cognizant of White Sox baseball during that 1990 season when Big Hurt first came up in the last year of Old Comiskey Park, this was the first White Sox hat that I ever knew. So this is one that's always going to be kind of near and dear to my heart. Nemesis of the show, Kenneth, coming in here saying that he's a Drew Thorpe guy. I must say I am a little bit surprised to see Kenneth, come in here and offer such strong support for Drew Thorpe early on here in his professional career, given a couple of, tougher outings that he has had to this point here. And, Drew Thorpe not being a particularly big strikeout guy, a lot of pitch to contact. I would think that Kenny would be somebody that wouldn't necessarily be in favor of a guy like Drew Thorpe here. So that is a little bit surprising right there. SPF in here again, Big Hurt. Yeah, that is Kenneth's favorite player, I think, And, the great thing about the Big Hurt is not only was he a great player, but he was smart. He was smart enough to know that sometimes when you're on social media, you have to block bozos like Kenneth for just going out there and running your mouth. I mean, it's just that's what happens. Frequent commenter on the show, Mike Slussers, poses an interesting question here. Steve, have a serious question for you. You're great at breaking down pitching. Debatable on that front right there. Do you have any explanation as to why Eloy Jimenez cannot hit the baseball in the air? This has been really a question that has gone on for probably the better part of the last 3 years here. Ever since he came back from the torn titty injury that he had in 2021, he's really been very inconsistent with his swing. We've seen tremendous periods of time where he is just hitting the ball on the ground with great regularity and not elevating the baseball, particularly pull side. For whatever the reason, Eloy just cannot put together any kind of consistency when it comes to hitting the ball in the air and trying to be the power force in the middle part of the order that so many people expected him to be when he was acquired in that crosstown deal. Coming up on 7 years now at this point here. I believe it was July 12th of 2017 when he came across town along with Dylan Cease for Jose Quintana. But for whatever reason, Eloy just can't seem to put it all together here. We've seen multiple hitting coaches come along the way here. We've seen a lot of people in the player development aspect of things trying to guide Eloy. And at the end of the day, it's just not there. I've talked about it on this show. I've talked about it on the X Machine. I personally cannot wait for the day that Eloy Jimenez is no longer wearing a White Sox uniform. The injuries and the poor performance here in 2024 is going to make this about the easiest decision that the White Sox could possibly make this winter here. That option is absolutely going to be declined. They are going to pay him $3 million to go away. And at the same time, it's going to create some roster flexibility for this team. Now, there's not going to be a tremendous amount of difference makers in the free agent market this winter here, but the Eloy, Andrew Vaughn, Gavin Sheets triumvirate of corner DHs taking up roster spots on this team, creating inflexibility with the lineup. I don't believe that is going to be an issue anymore going into 2025. Now, will this team address the holes in the DH spot at right field and first base in any meaningful fashion. I have significant doubts about that, but just clearing up some of this roster glut is going to be, I think, a welcome sight for a lot of White Sox fans and give this team hopefully a new added dimension to the roster here. And hopefully they can bring in some boppers here to hit the ball over the fence and light off the fireworks a little bit more consistently. I know that's something that Anthony's a big fan of. And listen, I'm not a huge fireworks guy myself. You know, we're coming up on Independence Day, 4th of July. So we're at that time for about a 4 to 5 day stretch here where you're just going to be hearing fireworks all hours of the night. Me personally, the only time I really care or give a shit about fireworks is when I see a White Sox player rounding the bases after hitting the ball over that fucking fence. That's what it all comes down to for me. So interesting comment here from Kenneth talking about Drew Thorpe again, circling back onto this. Thorpe works differently in this era. Everybody trying to blow guys away. Thorpe is flipping the script on the league, and he's had 3 or 4 good starts. I think that is, a valid point there from Kenneth that Drew Thorpe is a guy that does work differently from what we see across the majority of the league. We see so many guys now that are max effort, high octane, trying to throw 100 miles an hour on every single pitch. And Thorpe is, in a lot of ways, kind of a throwback. And I hate to use and hearken the name Greg Maddux. So I think about a guy like a Kyle Hendricks or a Mark Burley of more recent White Sox vintage here. Guys that were below the hitting speed from a velocity level standpoint and really had to rely on control and command and guile to be able to get guys out. We've seen with Drew Thorpe when he's pinpoint with his command and with his location, he's able to be a viable major league starting pitcher. He's able to induce soft contact when he gets ahead of hitters consistently and is able to then utilize that plus changeup. And everybody knows I love good changeup porn. It's one of my favorite things out there. So when Drew Thorpe is able to get ahead of guys 0-2, 1-2, and he can use that pitch to put guys away, he's having consistent success. Not getting a ton of swings and misses, not generating a lot of strikeouts. And I know that's really the best and most efficient, or not efficient, but the easiest way to go about getting outs in the year of our Lord 2024 and limiting damage offensively. But if you can get soft contact and if you can kind of get back to being one of those guys, if you can get a soft ground ball or soft, lazy fly ball on 1 to 2 pitches, that's going to go a long way in terms of helping to preserve a bullpen and allowing a pitcher to work deeper in the game. So Drew Thorpe, it's going to be interesting to see his continued evolution here as he gets more experience at the big league level, if he is able to work consistently ahead of hitters. And as I talked about earlier, kind of piggybacking off of his performance this past Friday here, he's starting to incorporate that sweeper into his repertoire a little bit more consistently here. So he's really going to need a third pitch to kind of emerge for him to be able to be successful. And again, really utilize and feature that changeup that really is a plus pitch. And it is tantalizing to watch when he is on and when he's able to locate that, the tremendous arm action that he has with that and the arm side run that he's able to generate with that pitch. It really is a nice thing of beauty here. So circling back to some of the other previous comments here, another one here from Kenneth relating to possible free agent acquisitions for this winter as we get out of the glut of the Eloy Jimenez, Andrew Vaughn, Gavin Sheets triumvirate taking up the corner positions here. Kenneth mentioning Tony Taters, Anthony Santander with the Baltimore Orioles, 7-235. I hope to God he's not serious with that contract offer, because we know obviously that the White Sox would never make an offer of that magnitude to any player. Also, Anthony Santander does not deserve that kind of money here, but Santander is a guy that actually would serve a functional purpose with this White Sox team. He's a left-handed bat that can hit the ball out of the ballpark. I believe he's 7th in the league in home runs right now. He's got 21. So he's a guy that does generate power, and he has played quality, consistent defense throughout the course of his career. There have been some fluctuations with it depending on which defensive metric that you want to take a look at, whether it is defensive runs saved or outs above average. But he's a legitimate, viable right fielder at the major league level, and a guy that can hit the ball out of the ballpark. And for a team that desperately needs power, that would be something that would really be very welcomed on this team here. So looking back now and kind of talking about some of the trade rumors and trade speculation again here with this team and some of the things that we are seeing kind of circulating through the media here. I know obviously the biggest talk is going to be on Garrett Crochet. And like I said, it's really almost kind of a daily saga at this point here for the next 30 days. And Luis Robert Jr. as well. He's going to be a very hot commodity. And you look at teams like the Seattle Mariners, who are just struggling for offense as they are in first place, looking to win their first division title since 2001. That's a team that desperately needs to score some runs. They're 27th in baseball in runs per game, not even averaging 4 runs per game. And they're just really doing things on the strength of their run prevention and defense. Just probably the best pitching staff, top to bottom, maybe in all of baseball, certainly in the American League there, but a team that desperately needs offense. They would certainly line up very well in a trade for a guy like Luis Robert. At the same time, you hear speculation about a team like the Philadelphia Phillies, a team that has postseason pedigree over the course of the last 3 seasons, going to the World Series in 2021 and falling, or excuse me, 2022 and falling short against the Houston Astros. Dave Dombrowski, the lead executive for the Phillies, a player, a guy that is known for going out and acquiring blue chip talent. We all remember Dombrowski was the guy that pulled the trigger on the deal that sent our favorite son, Chris Sale, to the Boston Red Sox in December of 2016 in a trade that will live in infamy in White Sox history, folks. Trade that ultimately saw Yohan Moncada, Michael Kopech, and 2 others come to the Sox. And it's fair to say at this point, the Sox lost that deal. There is no question about it. You can debate Chris Sale's impact for the Red Sox, but at the end of the day, Chris Sale was the man who struck out Manny Machado to clinch the 2018 World Series in Dodger Stadium. So the Boston Red Sox did not lose that trade, plain and simple. I would be very hesitant in a lot of ways about dealing with Dave Dombrowski again. If you go back and if you look over the course of his career as an executive, if you go back to his time with the Florida Marlins, the Detroit Tigers, the Boston Red Sox, and now the Philadelphia Phillies, this is a guy that does not lose trades very often. And if you take a look at some of the rumor and innuendo that surrounded that deal that ultimately saw Chris Sale go to the Boston Red Sox, a player that Rick Hahn was apparently very adamant about wanting to be included in that deal was Rafael Devers. Dombrowski balked at it, and ultimately the White Sox were not able to acquire Devers, and Devers has become a franchise cornerstone for the Red Sox. So in a lot of ways, I think if the Sox are going to entertain any discussions with the Philadelphia Phillies involving a player like Luis Robert, my thought process is this: if there is one prospect that Chris Getz and the White Sox front office identifies as the guy that they really want, and if Dombrowski is scoffing at including that player in the deal, that's the player that you really want. So that was the case 8 years ago with Rafael Devers. I would be remiss if I didn't say, Chris Getz, if you have somebody and Dombrowski is being adamant about not wanting them included, that's the guy you're going to want. Plain and simple. Dombrowski, one of the best baseball executives of the last 50 years, he's going to be going to Cooperstown as soon as he decides to call it quits. He is trying to find a way to win a World Series with his 3rd different franchise in an executive role. I mean, that's just unbelievably impressive when you stop and think about it. He's in some rarefied air when it comes to baseball executives over the course of the last 50 years. He's in the discussion with guys like John Schuerholz, who's won World Series with the Kansas City Royals in 1985, and then My Barbs being there since 1990, and then Theo Epstein winning World Series titles with the Boston Red Sox and that other team in the city of Chicago. So this is really going to be an interesting couple of weeks here for the White Sox, as trade speculation is going to really be running rampant. Guys like Eric Fetty, I also would anticipate him being moved at this point. The decision and his representation being Scott Boras is ultimately really, I think, the biggest factor for him. Fetty's pitched very well in his return to the major leagues, coming back from pitching in the KBO, where he was the MVP of the KBO a year ago. And he has really held up very well here. His work with Brian Bannister, incorporating the sweeper into his repertoire, something that he did in his time in the Far East here. He has transitioned well back to the major league level here, and he's performed admirably. So I think in one respect, you have to kind of tip your cap to the White Sox scouting taking place and identifying a guy like Erick Fedde and saying, hey, this is somebody that we want to bring in, somebody that we think can provide value to our pitching staff. And ultimately, because we are at such a low point in our competitive cycle, someone that could bring back some real value for this team in a trade. And given the short supply of quality starting pitching that is going to be available here at this trade deadline, Fedde's asking price could be pretty significant for this team as they look to try to continue to retool and restock a farm system that I'm personally not as high on as other prospect evaluators are, whether it's on White Sox Twitter or across the game at various publications like Baseball America or The Athletic with Keith Law and others. Personally, I don't see as much impact talent with this. Now, granted, I'm not investing a great deal of time watching games in Birmingham, Winston-Salem, Kannapolis, or Charlotte, the way I did during Rebuild 2.0. I'm just not putting myself through that again here, but just going through, looking at stats, on a consistent basis on Fangraphs or Baseball Reference, whatever site you want to go to here. There's a lot of guys that are leaving a lot to be desired, I think, in some aspects, and there certainly are positive things happening down on the farm here, but the glowing reviews I think that the farm system is getting from some within the fan base at the moment, in my opinion, is a little bit premature here. SPF here with another great comment here saying that Birmingham is the best to watch right now. Birmingham's pitching staff down in the Double-A Southern League has really been the best across almost the entire minor leagues, but certainly in the Double-A Southern League here as the Barons clinched the first half Southern League title for the first time since 2013. So they will be playing postseason baseball down in Birmingham, Alabama. Roll damn Tide, baby. So it's going to be interesting to watch to see what other players maybe make their way up to Birmingham over the course of the second half here, but also seeing what players that are currently there. Guys like Kai Bush, who came over in the deal for Lucas Giolito last year, along with Edgar Caro, to see if those guys finish out the year in Double-A Birmingham, or if they maybe get a cup of coffee in Charlotte. Maybe a guy like Bush makes a couple of starts for the Sox in late September here if Erick Fedde and maybe Garrett Crochet were to get moved. So be fascinating to watch. And then another guy like Mason Adams down there throwing the ball very well, really kind of an unheralded prospect that has kind of taken the baseball world a little bit by surprise this season. And the hope is that Brian Bannister implementing his pitching program across the entire minor league system here is starting to pay dividends for this team. We're seeing it, like I said, in Birmingham. We saw a combined no-hitter for the Kannapolis Cannonballers a couple of days ago here. So some positive things happening on that front here, but I'm just not at the point here where I'm going to anoint this farm system as a top 10 system. I know there are some people out there speculating that if this team makes trades of Garrett Crochet and of Luis Robert, that they'll vault themselves into a top 5 farm system. I'm just trying to tell people, exercise a little bit of caution with that at this point. We went through this exercise not long ago. We're not far removed from having 3 players that were top 5 prospects in the entire sport that simply did not produce at the major league level the way that they were expected to. So prospects are suspects. That's just where we are at this point. I know that's kind of all we have to look for right now with this team because of what is happening from a historic futility standpoint at the major league level here. But I'm not pinning my hopes and dreams of the future on guys down in Birmingham and Winston-Salem right now. Hopefully some of those guys pan out and can be contributors on the next competitive White Sox team. We don't know when that is going to be, but I'm not going to sit here and I'm not penciling in Mason Adams or Kai Bush into a 2026 starting rotation here. We went through this a couple weeks ago with a Nick Nastrini, a guy that came over from the Los Angeles Dodgers a year ago almost, in the deal that sent Lance Lynn out west. Nastrini threw the ball very well over the course of the spring. A lot of clamoring for him to break camp as a member of the starting rotation. Got his first taste of big league play in the month of April, had a decent start in his major league debut at home, and then has really been roughed up since then. Not throwing enough strikes, not getting enough swings and misses. And this is someone that a lot of people on the X machine were penciling in to a starting rotation spot for the remainder of this year and well into the future. And we saw how he has struggled to this point. So I'm not of the mindset here that guys are automatically going to be given positions this time, the way that we saw during Rebuild 2.0. Down on the farm, a couple other things that are a little bit troubling here. Kenneth coming in here saying that Montgomery looks shitty. Ramos looks shitty. Very sad. Colson Montgomery to this point, who coming into the season was a top 10 prospect, according to pretty much every major publication here, has really struggled down in AAA Charlotte in the sandbox that is, I think it's Truist Park now. Used to be BB&T Park there in downtown Charlotte, but that is really a hitter's paradise. One of the big reasons why we're seeing some of the Sox better pitching prospects skipping the AAA level entirely and coming straight to the big leagues. We saw that with Drew Thorpe. And as I mentioned, we might see that with a couple of other prospects, guys like Mason Adams and maybe a Kai Bush, maybe even a Jake Eater. I highly doubt that one here, but it could happen. Who knows? Came over from the team last July, the deal that sent Jake Berger down to Miami. So they're going to see a couple of former White Sox friends, Jake Berger and Tim Anderson, next weekend when the Sox go down to South Florida to take on the Marlins there. But, Montgomery's struggles here in AAA Charlotte are a little bit concerning. The strikeout rate is abnormally high right now. I think it's at about 28% here. I had expressed concern going into the season about the idea of vaulting Colson Montgomery to AAA Charlotte. He missed the first 2 months of the season a year ago with an oblique issue, so he's not had an extended amount of time in AA Birmingham here. Didn't have an opportunity to really go to that level and dominate the way that we saw former prospects like Luis Robert Jr., like Eloy Jimenez, and like even Oscar Colas do before getting their call up to AAA Charlotte and then potentially up to the corner of 35th and Shields. I personally, if it was me making the decision here, I would have actually had Colson Montgomery go back to AA Birmingham, at least for the first 6 weeks of this season here. Let him show you that he is too advanced for that level and let him hit his way to AAA Charlotte. Got off to a very slow start with the Knights this year. The strikeout rate, I want to say, was maybe 32 to 35% through the first month of the season here. It's come down a little bit here since then, but the power numbers and the bat-to-ball skills to this point have been troubling, to say the least. Other name that Kenneth had mentioned there, Brian Ramos, who made the jump directly from AA Birmingham to the Sox when Yohan Moncada went down. Ramos had a couple of nice games to start out, maybe his first week of his call-up here. Provided some life and some energy to this team, some nice base running and some good baseball instincts that he showed out there at times, and has really struggled since then. But this is something that has been actually pretty common for Ramos as he has moved up the organizational ladder since joining the White Sox organization here. Is that first time at a level, struggling for a couple of months, and then ultimately finding his footing. So I think at some point here, maybe in the second half of this season, it wouldn't shock me to see him go on a little bit of a heater down there in AAA Charlotte, maybe put up some gaudy numbers for maybe a month, 6 weeks, and then who knows, maybe by September, he's back up here playing games for the Sox. We don't know what we're going to get, if anything, out of Yohan Moncada. There's speculation that he could be back here within the next 2 to 3 weeks following the All-Star break, but remains to be seen at this point. He can't be counted on. It's pretty well known at this juncture. He's just not someone that has, outside of the 2019 season with the super bouncy ball, been able to be a consistent offensive producer. He did have the nice season in 2021 when he was top 5 of the league in on-base percentage, but he hasn't been the impactful bat for this team that they were looking for. And the injury history is one that can't be ignored, for lack of a better term. So it wouldn't shock me at all to see Brian Ramos back up with this team, maybe in September. So hopefully he can kind of find his footing there in AAA Charlotte for the next 2 months. Start hitting some balls out of the ballpark, making consistent contact. We saw the glove plays pretty well over there at third base. So he's someone that is going to be kind of positioning himself to try to be the third baseman of the future. Again, I think we're at a position where can't be anointing anybody as a position holder of the future in any spot, really. And that goes for Colson Montgomery as well at the shortstop position there. So hopefully this team can get some things going down there at the minor league level. Like I said, we're seeing pretty consistent success for the team in AA Birmingham. We'd like to see other success across multiple different levels, but listen, this team is kind of in a little bit of no man's land right now because of the uncertainty that is happening with guys like Garrett Crochet, Luis Robert Jr., Eric Fetty, and you might even throw in a guy like a Mike Soroka, who had another real solid outing today out of the bullpen here, really starting to induce a lot more swings and misses by going to a slider-heavy approach, something that I was actually hoping for him to do early on in the season. So we're seeing a noticeable change to his pitch mix, still using the four-seam fastball a little bit too much for my liking here, but he was able to wiggle out of a couple of jams there, like I said, in those later extra innings here today to give the offense an opportunity to try to win this baseball game here today. So it's going to kind of wrap things up for this past week here of White Sox baseball at home. Sox are getting set to get on the road for a 6-game road trip. They'll be taking on the Cleveland Guardians for 3 starting on Tuesday, and they will unfortunately have to be celebrating the birth of our nation on Thursday, July 4th in the Mistake by the Lake. I can't think of a worse place to have to spend our nation's birthday than on the lakes of the of Lake Erie. I mean, I've been to Cleveland. I was there for the burial of the Indians franchise. I wouldn't wish that on anybody to have to celebrate our nation's birthday there. But unfortunately, that is what's going to happen. Tuesday night, pitching matchup for the series opener will be Chris Flexen against Carlos Carrasco, who is back in a Cleveland Guardians uniform here. Flexen, another guy that is potentially auditioning for a trade to a contending team, somebody that could help at least provide innings and volume for a team to get through the latter 2 months of the season here. I don't know that he's someone that you would be trusting to get outs for you in the postseason, particularly in a starting role, but you need to cover innings during the course of the final 2 months of the season here. And I think Flexen has done enough and shown enough improvement with his stuff this season to be someone that, maybe you get a low-level lottery ticket, somebody that could potentially turn into a future reliever down the road. I'm not counting on getting anything of value for a guy like Chris Flexen, but I wouldn't expect him to be on this team come August 1st. I do think that there will be a contending team that maybe has a pitching injury to someone in the starting rotation that would look at a guy like Chris Flexen and say, hey, we know we can count on him maybe to get us 15 outs every 5 days. And that has value, and that is of importance for teams down the stretch here, because these last 2 months of the season can be quite a chore for a lot of people. On Wednesday, it's going to be Eric Fetty against Greg Williams for the Guardians. Fetty coming off of a little bit of a tough outing this past Wednesday against the Dodgers, giving up the 4 runs against the first place LA Dodgers, giving up home runs to Shohei Ohtani in that one there. It really was the Shohei Ohtani show on Wednesday, as I mentioned earlier. So Fetty looking to bounce back from that outing. The series finale on July 4th, 12-10 start for our nation's birthday. It's going to be Drew Thorpe taking the mound against Blake Lively. So hopefully this team can go out there, find a way to thwart the Guardians' efforts to win a division title. The Sox are 4-3 against the Guardians this year. How sweet would it be if, the Sox winning maybe 4 to 6 games against Cleveland this year was the thing that kept them from reaching the postseason? I would certainly love that. Our guy, Southside Ron, getting in the comments here. Thorpe on the 4th. Hashtag America. I can't think of anything more American than Drew Thorpe and that big, beautiful mustache taking the mound on the birthday of this great nation this coming Thursday. So the only thing better than that would be to see him go out there, give you 7 innings, a shutout ball, maybe 5 strikeouts, and get a White Sox win and really spoil the holiday for those people in that disgusting city that is the Mistake by the Lake. So that's going to wrap things up for us here today on the Sox on Tap Sunday Funday show here. Riding solo for the first time here. It's been an experience, I'll say that. I don't know if it went completely off the rails the way I was anticipating it, but hey, we got through it. I want to thank everybody in the comments section for hopping in here, having a little bit of fun tonight. And as a reminder, please go to ontapsportsnet.com for all your Chicago sports literature and podcasting needs. Going to be a lot of content coming out here over the next couple of days as it relates to Sox trade speculation. You might even see some new hashtag content from yours truly here. I got a couple of things in the content factory here, so be on the lookout for that over the course of the next couple of days. It's going to wrap things up. We'll be back with you here detailing the White Sox series in Cleveland this Tuesday through Thursday. As always, folks, White Sox for life.